Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. It's going to be a weird week because we didn't really have a lot of football games. I know Army and Navy played. I was surprised that Navy actually got the win, not even bowl eligible. But they had some crazy plays at the end. Did you see any of that game?
Yeah, I watched a good bit of it. It's one of my favorite games of the year to watch, and I'd love to someday be able to actually be there for the game because I think it's such a crazy atmosphere.
I didn't even think of that. Did they have fans? I just assumed that it was on like base or something.
Well, I looked it up. They have it at the Giant Stadium. Usually it was.
Oh yeah, I think it was in Philly the one year, wasn't it?
For a while, it was in Philly.
Yeah. No, we should go to a game there. I think that would be cool because it's always after, so there's nothing else going on that weekend, right? It's just a weird time.
It's usually the last day of Buck season.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right. Because did they push it back when they added the conference championship games? I know it was like the last weekend after the season. I feel like it used to be earlier, but maybe I'm wrong.
It's always like its own weekend.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought NFL started their games on Saturday this weekend. But then I didn't see that. So then I was like, well, when did they start that then? Maybe they pushed it back. Or maybe I'm just misremembering because I thought, well, we have fantasy playoffs coming up. That's usually like a Saturday, so I got to make sure I'm not making a mistake. But we'll get into that here in a second. The first topic that it's probably already played out because it happened last Thursday. Steelers played the Vikings. They were down big. Like, what are you doing? And I told you there's a play in the second quarter, I think it was, where Ben dropped back and the ball just flooded right in the dirt. And I was like, what the hell? It looked like a dead arm. And I was like half expecting him to come out. And he like made a motion to the receiver like, yeah, what are you doing? Like, and I'm like, I hope he ran the wrong route because that was such a poor pass that he might be done. This might be like his last game, even though they're not really going to show it. But then the second half comes, he fires back.
Well, no, but I think when you look at his body language, more so since he's come out that he's retiring, you can almost start to see now where he would try to hide it before. He's now at a point where it's like, F it. Like you're clearly doing the wrong thing. Like he's anticipating something else and he's just tired. And he's just like, whatever, just quit.
Well, I mean, I saw there's a big log jam of teams trying to get into the playoffs. You would hope that he would be able to get there one last time, maybe get a few wins. Who knows, get lucky. It's not like any team in the AFC has looked awesome. I mean, remember the Patriots beat the Bills with 3 passes only? Like, come on. The Chiefs haven't looked that good. And then they called out Mahomes, and he's like, well, I know I've played like crap, but we're winning, and that's what matters, right? Right? I'm like, yeah, it matters now, but when you get in the playoffs and you play like crap, you're going to lose. That's what happened to like Lamar Jackson all season. And then he's hurt, right?
Yep.
So you have, I didn't know if like, I didn't read the diagnosis if he was coming back or not, but that's like, it's wide open kind of. And then of course, this is a year where, again, they can't get it done. Can't beat the Lions. Can't beat the Vikings, which is the team the Lions just beat. Like, what are you doing? And you let them come out and your defense is so poor that they put up like, what, 30-something points on you? But they have a chance to tie it. They drive down. They're around like the 30-yard line, I think. And they hit Claypool for a first down. And there's like, what, 10 seconds left or something? Maybe a little bit more than that. He gets up and starts celebrating it with a slow motion point for the first down. And I thought, what are you doing? And then he didn't even try to get the ball. One of the linemen tried to grab it from him. And he ended up dropping it. Claypool did. Like he didn't want him to take the ball. And then they were yelling at each other. They get lined up. As soon as they spike the ball, Claypool's yelling at the lineman that tried to get the ball off him. I can't remember who it was. But I'm like, are you serious?
Well, there was a little more to it because while the lineman was going to get the ball, what should have happened is that Claypool should have ran to the hash, handed it to the official. what happened was in between where the lineman and Claypool were trying to grab the ball, the linebacker from the Vikings actually slaps the ball out, and you can see it on video.
He hit the ball.
He hit the ball out. And so the issue that Claypool had was that it should have been a penalty on Minnesota for slapping the ball out. But it's also like all it did was it highlighted if you sprint, like knowing the situation and sprinting to the line to like hand the ball to the official,
see
that issue doesn't happen.
Well, it was such a cluster that it didn't even occur to me that the lineman could have hit it or the defender could have hit it because they were both like together. It looked like they just dropped the baton to me, like during the exchange.
Yeah. Oh, I saw a couple different clips where like it's very clear that Minnesota slapped the ball out, which credit to them because if they, number one, they didn't get called for it, and they took advantage of the fact that Claypool wasn't paying attention. To me, the thing that was more surprising was that Florida State product. Dalvin Cook probably could have rushed for 1,000 yards against the Steelers defense, and Minnesota took their foot off the gas. Like I watched the first half and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the absolute worst thing because the guy I was playing in fantasy that week had Dalvin Cook as his running back. I was like, he's gonna win the league tonight. He's gonna rush for 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns, and that'll be the end of my season.
Well, I will say that they did take the foot off the gas, but some of it I wonder if the Vikings, that's just a poor team that doesn't know how to like really win. And putting it all together, the Steelers still could have had a touchdown, even after that first down celebration, which I still say, if you watch the replay, Claypool's yelling at 60-something, whatever the Steelers lineman is. He's not yelling at the official or the defense. He's yelling at the own guy. Like, what are you doing? Like, I didn't understand it at all. And he obviously didn't know the play of the game. And then one of the receivers, I can't remember if it was Washington or Johnson, they said that it was addressed in a team meeting. And sometimes, like, you know, in the heat of the moment, you get fired up. Because, yeah, celebrating a first down, when you know that the game's almost over and you're driving to win, how would you forget the scenario? Like, you obviously knew you got the first down, right? So, like,
I think he knew that he had the first down, but where it ended up costing them is they could have gotten off at least another play or two.
Oh yeah, one more play,
at least one more that was with the time that was left, and then. I mean, take it for what it's worth. Don't be down 35-0.
Well, also that next play, I think it was the very next one where they ran that like drag route that took forever, and I thought the play's going to end or the game's going to end on this play, where the dude's like trying to get out of bounds.
Yeah, like Claypool was 100% wrong, and with each week that he has some kind of blunder, I want to punch him that much more. Like it's so frustrating, and with a full amount of disclosure, he's on my fantasy team as well. That one week I leave him on the bench and he scores like 20 points, and then the following week I start him and he gets 2 points, and it's just like he's so hot and cold that it's been a frustrating year of trying to figure out what to do with him. And then to add to it, he's literally making in-game decisions that are costing Pittsburgh games where he's fumbling and dropping passes, and you see that with his size and athleticism, he could be doing more than what Jamar Chase is doing, the rookie at Cincinnati, and it's just like, I'm just gonna be content with like blaming everybody else for my problems.
Well, I will say, join the club, but it might, because I've been complaining about Steelers receivers now for like 3 years. They let Antonio Brown go. He was clearly the most talented of the bunch. And yet they're bringing in and they're letting the BS continue with dudes that won't even get picked up by another team. Like, Antonio Brown is in trouble with the law and faking vaccines and all kind of other stuff, vaccine cards. They're still considering playing him. They're like, well, you know what he brings to the table. Juju, I went through all that crap, and I used to complain about him. And then, guess what? No one wanted to sign him. Whenever you're putting out a presser that says, hey, I had better offers, like, you didn't have better offers, man. Otherwise, it would have leaked from the teams. Like, not you yourself saying that. Like, that's what I'm wondering with Claypool. Like, they're going to at least be able to re-sign him for cheap. But it goes back to the locker room question. Everyone talks about how great Mike Tomlin is. Maybe you need to change the scenery. And now it's starting to leak out in the local Pittsburgh press. Have you seen this? Where they're talking about not making a move for quarterback. Which to me, if it's leaking in the press, remember the Adam Schefter thing? Where it leaked out that the NFL tells the reporters exactly what to write. That means that they're thinking of keeping Rudolph for next year. And they want to shore up the offensive line. So next year is going to be a very boring draft. If they're already talking about it, I wonder if they're going to try to get a free agent quarterback. Because just by saying, like, look, we're not focused on getting a rookie quarterback, which I understand. You're going to draft what, around the middle? Probably. I guess a little bit lower if you're not in the playoffs.
Yes.
But, like, what are you doing in terms of a long-term build? Maybe you can attract a veteran quarterback if you're saying, like, look, we're going to build our line. We're going to get all these young guys and stuff. We're going to get a product in place. Maybe you'll be able to bring in a guy like Aaron Rodgers or someone. I don't know. I mean, there's rumors that he's interested in Pittsburgh. I've talked about it. He's talked about it going back to October. But I think having that in your mind where you're like, hey, we're trying to attract some of these free agents too. Let's just put it out there that we're not even going to consider drafting a quarterback. Because now you keep it open that free agent quarterbacks are looking and they're saying, you're sticking with that guy? Basically like Tom Brady said with Garoppolo and the 49ers, like, you serious? I want to sign with you guys and you're sticking with Garoppolo? What are you doing? And then he goes out and wins the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. So, maybe. That's my hope. They put out the news,
that's a
but
smarter move anyhow.
Yeah, because you don't need a rookie quarterback. And who is he going to learn under? Mason Rudolph? You're going to be fighting. You're going to have a Bears situation where you have a young quarterback come in. How many years in a row now?
But it's like you keep. If anything, the last piece to the puzzle is the rookie quarterback. And when you look at when Roethlisberger was drafted, look at what they had already had in place. They already had the bus. They already had a lot of the. They had the receivers. They had the defense. They had all those pieces already in place. They had a great defense that they weren't asking him to come in and win games. They were asking him to just manage the game, hand the ball off, and don't lose it by throwing 4 or 5 interceptions. It's a winning business model.
Well, I mean, you've seen it right now with the Packers this year where they come in and everyone's talking about how Love starting on Aaron Rodgers seems to be great. Aaron Rodgers goes out and they look like garbage. And it's like, how much time and money did they invest in this guy? To like, could you remember Tom Brady's backups? They always looked just as good as him. And everyone was always like, hey, maybe Tom Brady's not that good. I'm talking about like the late 2000s, you know, when they were like losing to the Giants and stuff. And they had Castle and a bunch of other quarterbacks, Garoppolo eventually, that didn't really pan out. But everyone was like, hey, these guys are great. Maybe Tom Brady's not that good.
Do you mean when they had like Amendola and Randy Moss and Wes Welker and
they didn't have them after that.
Aaron Hernandez and Gronkowski, and they had like all kinds of skill guys and a great defense. And what was that? Is that the time frame you're talking about?
Oh yeah, that's exactly the time when everyone looked great and people were like, Tom Brady sucks.
Where it was pretty much like me or you could have quarterbacked the team. Because all they had to do is just win by 3 because you're playing in Massachusetts. That team?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Hey, that's what Aaron Rodgers, he went out and Love could have thrown up to Devontae Adams. It's like, did you not watch Aaron Rodgers do it for like 15 weeks in a row?
Absolutely.
Hey, I just don't know at this point how much you're going to be invested in a rebuild. Because if you're putting out the feelers that you're not drafting a quarterback, be ready for a rough year. There's no Tommy Maddox coming out of nowhere to save this situation.
But I don't think you have to. Like, I think that it's a 2-pronged part. I think number one, you shore up the offensive line because clearly Roethlisberger's just.
Well, hold on. Hold on. Look at the Saints, man. Your man, Jameis Winston. Look at how much his injury has killed their team. That was their backup plan, was like, hey, we have these other pieces, like we're going to build it, whatever. We're not going to get another quarterback. We'll just rely on our backups that we have.
But I think that there's also been a lot of injuries with their wide receivers and other pieces along the way that's causing.
Thomas was out all year, wasn't he? So like him going out, like Winston going out, the only difference that happened so far, Winston gets hurt, the team is dead, right?
Well, then Simeon got hurt, and then Hill was hurt.
Hill's still the quarterback, which baffles me. The dude can get so many fantasy points; it's like unbelievable.
And then Hill came back.
I'm a Hill away from a championship run. After all my other injuries. Do you have anything else to talk about before we get into fantasy stuff?
Well, I just think
Steelers, you can go ahead.
On the Steelers, I think you look at where they're at, retool the offensive line. Don't ask Mason Rudolph to be Ben Roethlisberger. Tailor it to him. So build in a lot of the smaller throws, the screens that Pittsburgh's been known to do, and put him in a position to succeed. Najee Harris is already carrying the ball like 35 times a game. Keep that model, but do it with an actual offensive line as opposed to 7 rookies, and see what happens.
But like Matt, who are they going to get? Like they could draft the wrong guy.
But I think that they can. I don't know who the offensive line prospects currently are, but I feel certain that you're going to hit with an offensive line prospect faster than you will trying to draft one of these quarterbacks in this year's draft. And I know that Kenny Pickett will be there, Malik Willis will be there. You have a lot of guys that could potentially fall to Pittsburgh at this point because I don't think that it's a strong quarterback class. I don't think any of them that you draft is a guy that you draft and you plug and play on day one. So unless they're a Lamar Jackson, a Peyton Manning, that you're just saying, I don't care what you're doing, you're starting on day one and face of the franchise.
Well,
build elsewhere.
We'll see. I will say that if they draft the tackle from Ohio State that Hutchinson destroyed, I would be just devastated. Because he's slated as a first-round tackle, All-American. And then you can just watch the gif of him just getting destroyed, and I'm like, oh, my God. How does that build your team up? I don't know. But I also had to bring up, so along with that article, they talked about wait, let me see, because I have some of the stuff. Someone else, Mark Madden, made comments, too, about how the Steelers fans aren't going to be pleased with the direction. Oh, where do you think he's hearing that? Gee whiz. From the Steelers himself? But he distinctively called out some of the poor draft picks that they've made, like Devin Bush. Devin Bush wasn't a poor draft pick his first year. Remember how dynamite he was and everyone thought he was going to be awesome? And then guess what? He got injured. He hurt his ACL. He hasn't looked anything like himself since. So, like, you don't know if a guy's going to get hurt. Hell, Najee Harris could tear his ACL like the last week of this year.
Don't you say that.
I'm just saying, at some point you can't just be like, hey, look at these poor decisions we make. I'm like, not really a poor decision if a guy gets hurt, you know? But I'm wondering if that's what their excuse is going to be, like, hey, we've had so many misses on the draft board, we're just going to try to rely on free agency, and maybe it'll work. Maybe they'll get Aaron Rodgers. Maybe they'll get Deshaun Watson. I don't know. Are there massage parlors in Pittsburgh?
Not good ones.
You've been talking to the owner of the Patriots again, Robert Kraft.
my boy.
His name slipped my mind. Otherwise, the joke would have been 100 times funnier. Let's see. That's all I have for the Steelers. You don't really know. But come on. Devin Bush, he said he had to come out this week and say, I'm the same player from before the injury. Like, no, you're not, bro. You're not. That's why you're saying it.
Well,
like,
no, I don't. I think he could be, but it's tough to say because the player the reason that I think he was getting the stuff that he was getting done on the field was because Pittsburgh's defensive line was better. Overall was just better.
Plus, he had the speed. His number one thing was speed. I don't think he got it back. It looks like he lost a step, and he's already undersized. So, you said, maybe move him to the outside. That would be a better deal. But inside, he's getting swallowed up, and he's not being able to get around and burst through the holes anymore.
But you're right. I think inside, at least right now, because of how much the offensive linemen are getting to him, he's getting swallowed up, and he's not able to play as freely as what he was before his injury. So I think that that's something that you have to consider.
Yeah, I don't know. I just saw Tomlin made a comment today about Chase Claypool, and he defended the celebration. He said that he's growing and developing in a lot of different ways, Matt.
Well, and to Tomlin's credit, I think that it's the right thing to say, and that he is growing and he is young, but this isn't a league that anymore allows you to make the kind of mistakes that he's making, especially when you look at Pittsburgh and on the heels of their receivers who've had locker room and behavior type issues, the Juju distraction things that have costed games. And you go back through, and the Antonio Browns, the Mike Wallaces, it's like since that core Super Bowl winning team where you had Hines Ward there, they've lacked that presence, and I think you could also say since their wide receivers coach who held them to a higher standard that passed. Since he has been out of the picture, they haven't been the same type of team. Oh,
that's true. And you might be right with the drop-off there, because Brown was his own little thing. Speaking of him, because he's Tom Brady's best friend these days, he put out on Instagram that he never knew how good he had it with Ben Roethlisberger, and he apologized for his actions and said he appreciates Ben Roethlisberger. So he must know that he's retiring. Because why else would you bury that hatchet right now?
Because he's on the verge of getting his ass cut because he was at home doodling his own COVID vaccine card.
Well, like I said, he's so good, Matt, that they're looking for ways to keep him in spite of all that. Like, think of how he's been out of the game. Le'Veon Bell can't even get a shake. Yet Antonio Brown, he's making mistake after mistake. Patriots are like, hey, we'll give you a try. Buccaneers are like, hey, we'll give you a try. And then he had that great playoff game. Or maybe was it the Super Bowl? I can't remember last year. But then he balled out. So now they're like, well, we should probably keep you around.
Well, and Arians came out right now and was like, it's 50-50. We could potentially just cut him.
Yeah, they could because they don't want other teams to get him. So they're just trying to bide time right now, I think. But that's it. I do know that my other note with this is Kenny Pickett. You brought him up. He's right there. Remember last time Pitt had a great quarterback that slipped right through their hands to the Dolphins? Dan Marino, they passed on him.
Kenny Pickett is not Dan Marino.
Why, because he doesn't have a mullet?
Top to bottom, he's just not. He's not Dan Marino.
I never seen Dan Marino fake a slide and run 60 yards for a touchdown, Matt.
Dan Marino could hit you at your house right now from wherever he's at.
He couldn't even run through the subway line in those commercials where his pants were slimming down.
Guess what? When he gets back on Nutrislim, he will throw it through your face.
Those are even first def. Those are regular definition commercials back in the day. Let's get into fantasy football. I'll be back on the fake slide here in a second. But playoffs are getting ready, and I wish I had some tips to give people because I think everyone likes the fantasy football tips. But at this point, if you're in the playoffs like me, you know you're a classic head coach, a great guy, really knows football.
Oh, blow it out your ass.
I'm a two-time champion. The only person that actually has won multiple championships, me, in our league. That's how you know, Matt. When you're in the playoffs, you always have a fighting chance. But I will say, my team has zero chance. It's almost embarrassing that I made it into the playoffs. Like, I'm running out. McCaffrey just decided he didn't want to play. Like, I honestly hate him so bad. It's unbelievable. Where it's like last year and then this year again, where I thought there's no way he's going to just get injured and like fake sitting out. And then he's like, oh yeah, I hurt my ankle again. I'm out. And then my man Derrick Henry, I was hoping he'd come back. I thought I'd ride Derrick Henry. I'd buy his jersey. I'd wear it for a month straight if he's able to get me this championship. But then they won't let him play because he has that broken foot in his bone. Or broken bone in his foot. I said it backwards. They said he would have been healed by now. But they're waiting to see if he recovers to January. So I hope he doesn't get like super fat if I use my keeper on him. You know how like some players, they get injured for the first time and they never recover. Wasn't it the other Bama player that got like 100 pounds?
Eddie Lacy.
Yeah, Eddie Lacy. So you got to always be wondering, like, what's up? Is he at Nick Saban's Alabama buffet right now? Got to be careful with that. And then Thielen, injured, questionable. Like, if he doesn't come back right now, my team is Mike Evans and what's the name of the Patriots kicker? Folk. That's my team. And then whoever else I decide to roll out there. I did pick up Tyrod Taylor, and he was playing awesome, and then he got injured. So I'm like, oh, great. I had 2 good weeks out of him. And now I'm left with Matt Ryan. And he barely throws, and he doesn't run. And he's another name that's been thrown out there for the Steelers. And I'm like, please, I've watched too much Matt Ryan for fantasy analysis this year. I never want to see him play with the Steelers. Could you imagine how boring that team would be? Players celebrating every bit. Matt Ryan, he's not like a locker room. He's not in charge of the locker room, right? He's too reserved for that. That's why they let Tom Brady come back and win that Super Bowl when he's in charge. Like, a guy like Aaron Rodgers would never have let that happen. Although he did slide last year, remember? He didn't run for the touchdown. So maybe I'll be back on the hate train. Who knows? So I've been looking. Sonny Michel. I'm thinking, okay, I can pick him up. He goes lights out. Does okay this week. Hilliard for the Titans. I thought that might be running back to tell people to pick up. One rush. They've been rotating running backs since Henry went out. I don't know who's going to be getting the carries from week to week. So realistically, at this point, it's a crapshoot. If you're in the playoffs, congratulations. I know it's tough to get there. You always have a fighting chance, but you got to take some gambles. I really don't have any guys to look out for. I'm trying to fight through myself. Every guy I think, I'm going to have a good chance of winning, they go out. These are some of the points I got last week from my guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 of my dudes got 1, 2, 3, 4, Matt. What the hell does that even equal up to? 10? 10 points between 4 dudes? That's almost half my team. That was, who was that? Keenan Cole from the Jets. I picked him up. I thought he might be good. Conklin, Thielen's out. I'll just go with the Vikings tight end. The entire team is running all over Pittsburgh. He gets 4 points. Mooney from Chicago, 2. He's been kind of awesome, but the quarterback situation is so bad. I just feel bad rolling him out there at this point. And then Hilliard, like I said, he was the 1. So, sad. But you have some guys on your bench, like now that they really won't be playing. What do you think? Who would you pick? Who would you pick up if you had a chance to make a run? Maybe a quarterback or someone? I don't even know who's available. Probably no one.
There really wasn't anyone that was standing out. I was surprised, and I know it was partially because he was skeptical to even play. But I picked up Roethlisberger and was able to have, and I knew that I needed a miracle scenario to get a foot in the playoffs, because I had to win, and then I needed like a slew of teams, and I had every scenario play out to tie it up, and ended up losing with the points scored at the end.
Yeah, you did have a chance. Everyone lost. That's how I backed into the playoffs. I haven't won since was it McCaffrey got hurt again? Like, I haven't won. And any guy I pick up for running back, it's like hit or miss. So, and both my running backs are out.
Well, and I thought you brought up an interesting point, because one of the when you're in a PPR league, if you can have 2 or 3 strong running backs, that you know are going to be active, you can really put a run on. But I feel like when you have so many teams that use a running back by committee, it's tough to go from week to week of who's going to get the carries, who's going to get the pass receptions, because a lot of them will do like what the Raiders do. Jacobs will get all the short yardage carries, but Drake will also get a lot of the passing stuff out of the backfield. So then from week to week, if they don't get goal line opportunities, you're getting hosed on fantasy production.
Well, see, and you got to be really, really worried about rotations. So, like, looking at my line and who I can pick up for running back this week as my running back by committee is running out, Rashad Penny. These are his last 3 games, Matt. 1 point, 6 points, 26 points. So you see the 26 and you're like, oh, hell yeah. Like, that's going to continue, right? He's going to at least get 10 points, 15, whatever. Pete Carroll said, we're just going to continue rotating running backs. That's like the sentence of death because rotating what? 3 carries? The one game he had 2 carries. Like, is that what you're rotating him in for? 2 carries? That was the game he had 1 point. It's like, So you never know. At this point in the game, like that's why I had 2 stud running backs, and I'm probably the only person in the league that had both of their stud running backs get injured.
Well, that was why, like when we had our draft, I thought it was a risky move by you, but I feel like if to do it over, if you could replay the season without the injuries, you're probably a much higher seed in our division just because
I win the division. Like, I'm in the division. Like, I came in second, and I was in first by a good bit until those injuries. Like, I think, and remember, I played the beginning of the year without McCaffrey. So if I were to do it over, I would still get Henry, but I would draft someone else instead of McCaffrey. And maybe I go like, I don't know. I probably could have got Kamara or someone. I know, has he been injured? I mean, their team hasn't been the best, so I haven't been keeping up with them. But like just having another option where it's like, hey, you picked a guy, and I just thought there's no way McCaffrey, he's going to be playing for his contract. There's no way he gets dinged up and then sits out, and that's exactly what happened. Dinged up his quad or whatever, doing that jump cut. Then the Panthers have been bad. He comes back, and he just sits because they're bad. And now they're talking about cutting him down here and like, well, how can we move him in this big salary because he's not playing? And they spend so much money on him, they're afraid to play him. So it's like a weird situation where like it's like 1 in 100 that I thought when I sat down and I was making my bids and I'm like, do I go for it again? And like I told you, I think I even paid what I paid last year. I just thought if he goes higher than that, I'm going to stop bidding. But if I can get him for the same, it's kind of like just using my keeper on him because I just didn't think that he would give up, but he did. So, and both my guys. I mean, I don't blame Henry. You broke a bone in your foot. I think you can fully recover from that. So honestly, he'd probably be my keeper next year, but I'd probably split, and I probably won't go too high again. Unless I know, like you almost have to get a Harris from the Steelers and just hope that he doesn't get hurt. Like Saquon Barkley is a guy where if you bid on him, you're nuts. Like I'm actually holding on to his backup because I'm hoping that he gets hurt.
Well,
I figure it's a 50-50. He scored 11 points last week on my bench, by the way.
In one of
Booker.
In one of the ballsiest moves, one of the guys in our league had him drafted for really high. And then because of all the injuries and everything, cut him and re-signed him for $1 to keep him as his keeper.
Who, Barkley?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I figured there's no way. Like, even if you have him, he's never going to get through a season. That's like McCaffrey. I could probably cut him and try to do the same thing and be like, oh, hey, great, McCaffrey next year. He's probably not even going to play. So, like, now you have him on the IR. But that's why I haven't cut any of my guys, because, like, Derrick Henry, I don't even know what I have him for. But we're getting into the weeds. This is probably the boring talk, get into the money stuff. Anything else you have for the NFL?
No.
All right, getting back to the fake slides. So I brought up Kenny Pickett and his fake slide against Wake Forest. I don't even know if we talked about it on the show, but I have the dual TV setups. So like Michigan's playing the same time Pitt's playing, which is kind of dumb. You can't stagger the Big Ten and the ACC championship game a little bit. I mean, it works out perfect for me because the commercials kind of line up. There was a commercial So I'm turning and I'm watching the Pitt game, but I had the sound off because I wanted to really hear the Michigan game. I was focused on that one. I see Pickett run, and I think, did he fake slide there? Everyone stopped. I thought they blew the whistle, but it wasn't even. It was a poor fake slide to begin with, but it worked. He ran for 60 yards, 50 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I'm surprised that they're letting that touchdown stand. I was waiting for them to be like a flag or something because it has to be illegal. Nope. He said he planned it. I think we did talk about that. And now the NCAA said that they're banning it. And I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. It should happen immediately after the game. Like, yo, we're all about player safety. You can't be fake sliding because the next time they're going to kill you. Like, if they didn't put it in before the bowl season, I guarantee Kenny Pickett would have been crushed on a slide.
Well, but, the crazy thing is that there was one of the Florida State games, and now I'm drawing a blank on which one it was. Jordan Travis was running towards the sideline, and it looked like he was going to head out, and then he just kept going down the sideline. They're like, oh, they pulled. It may have even been the Boston College game where they're like, oh, they thought he was going to pull up out of bounds, and then he just kept running down the sideline. So it's like, if that's what you're going to do, like if you're aiming toward and it looks like you're pulling up and they ease up and you keep going, the next time they're going to tee off on you. And I feel like if you get away with something like that and you get retaliated by getting unloaded on, then that's just part of the game.
Well, see, I think it was the Michigan-Ohio State game where I think it was Stroud. He did the same thing. He let up, and the Michigan guy just shoved him out of bounds. And the announcers were like, oh, where's the flag on that? And I was thinking, he's still in bounds. What if he just ran? And there was no flag, and like I had said, that game, they held the flag, so that was great, because they could have ticky-tacked. They could have called that and said, he was easing up, so he was defenseless or whatever. But I thought, you don't know. Who's to say he doesn't spin back in? Because just because he's running and he's kind of running towards the pylon anyway, plus you're just going to, let him get the first down? And he shoved him. He kept him from the first down, I think. I can't remember. I think it was that game. It was one of the last ones. It was either that one, Maryland, or Iowa, and I'm pretty sure it was Ohio State. But don't quote me on that. I think it was the Michigan game. But that's the one thing I thought. The announcers are expecting a flag on a play like that when you don't know. The fake slide's just an extension of that. You don't know if he's going to slide. You're going to have to kill him the next time. Because, that's what I would do. And maybe not put your head down. There was another one, too. I think I did talk about it, the Iowa one, where the guy lowered his head, and then the defender tried to kick up, and they tried to review it, and I thought they're going to definitely call targeting, and they didn't. And I'm like, why would you even review that? Big Ten. But the other big news came out early signing day. Lane Kiffin said that in an interview with one of their Rebel sites going into early signing day that players are basically going whichever school's offering them the most money. Which
in other news, water is wet.
They've been doing that. They've been doing that for decades. Remember when Dabo Swinney was buying people's uncles' churches?
Yes.
Yeah, and then they because that was one of the things with Rashawn Gary. He was the overall number one recruit, and there were connections with his uncle in Clemson, and people were like, "Oh, he's going to go to Clemson now." And I was thinking, why? What if he doesn't even know the uncle? That's the thing, but that's a perfect plan. You have a church, you have a high recruit that's a nephew, and then next thing you know, they're laundering money through your church basically as donations. But now that it's in the open, I think you're onto something, because you're seeing schools like Clemson kind of fall off. I know they lost a lot of their coaches, but I wonder if they're getting out now because of it. They're losing their edge, Matt. In one day, last Thursday or Friday, Clemson went from a top 10 recruiting class, and they dropped all the way down to, let's see where it is. And I know they lost, like I said, a lot of their guys. People were making a big deal about their AD going to Miami. It's no one is committing to your school because of the athletic director. How high of an opinion do you have to think of yourself as the athletic director that you're hey, I know we're going to lose some recruits over me leaving? It's no.
No. What kept it afloat was that you had Brent Venables as your defensive coordinator, who was clearly a rock that had opportunities to leave for other places and didn't. And being able to use him as saying, he's still here, he's still here. Dabo was more of an offensive-minded coach anyhow. So you had a consistent, even as guys were being cycled out offensively, you still had an offensive-minded head coach, a defensive coordinator that wasn't going anywhere. You had that continuity and consistency that you could get away with having that the main parts of the program. As soon as he left, I mean, to me, that rocks the foundation of the program.
Definitely. And that actually helped. He flipped a bunch of guys to Oklahoma, where now Oklahoma climbed up. They're 9, Michigan's 10, Florida State's 11 right now, which all big recruiting classes. Clemson fell all the way to 15th. They still have a number 5 guy. They just lost a bunch of recruits. They're down to 13 commits now. So they could easily backfill it and climb back up just based on sheer numbers. But it's not as top-heavy as what it was before. And you're losing offensive coordinator. I think you end up going to Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which that's a big one. I don't think we're done. There's heavy rumors still. I think I mentioned it with Ryan Day to Chicago. There are rumors coming out that might be true again. Did I send them to you?
Yeah.
Where, like, later in the bowl game, like, he might be really looking at the NFL, and that's been the rumors where he might not be at Ohio State for long. You have to imagine every day I see people making jokes about Ohio State losing to Michigan. Desmond Howard did it on the Heisman show, and people went nuts. Like, can you imagine, like, if you're the coach and you're constantly getting that Urban Meyer's down and he's going down at the Jacksonville. They're eliminated from the playoffs. I did see an interesting theory, Matt, where it was one of the SEC guys, some SEC writer. I don't know if it's for ESPN or someone, but he had a theory that Urban Meyer is going to end up at Florida State. He's going to follow the Nick Saban trajectory, where you start in the Big Ten, you win, or no, I guess he didn't start in the Big Ten, but you coach in the Big Ten, but your roots are in the SEC. So Urban Meyer was at Florida, Nick Saban was at LSU. They go to the NFL, and then they go back to their rival in the South. So he went to Alabama, which was LSU's rival. I know they're not the main rival. And he predicted that he would either end up at Miami or Florida State. And with Cristobal coming in, he said it's looking likely that he'll end up at Florida State. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say no.
No to the Herbster?
Yes.
You don't think there's a good co-ed scene for him?
I wouldn't. I've said before, I don't want him.
Well, Norvell's recruiting a top 10 class.
Norvell's recruiting a top
to
10. He's doing everything. He's making the progress that you want to see. For as much of a train wreck as I saw, and I was guilty when at the end of the Jimbo Fisher era, I wanted to see a change. And I wanted to see where you were seeing that the players weren't buying in. And when you have to drop a contract to say, I will continue to play hard, you're not winning the locker room. So I was like, we need to go in a different direction. And I've always been a fan of teams that have the ability to play at an up-tempo pace. And I loved the concepts that Taggart was bringing in from Oregon. But it just, when you read about his lack of organization and his lack of attention to detail, where there were reports that he was hanging recruits, he accidentally locked recruits out during visits. They got outside the facility and then he didn't know where they were, and they were having their walkthroughs filmed by opposing fans, and it was matching up exactly with the game plan. There were so many things that I wanted him to succeed, but he wasn't organized and couldn't handle that big stage. And you see, he was handed Kiffin's team that was a conference champion, and it's not going well for him. So I'm glad to see that Norvell is picking up the pieces of a complete mess and is moving it in the direction that it needs to be. They're getting recruits through the portal, and I think the transfer portal is helping Florida State immensely because they're able to pull guys in, and they're building these relationships with these top recruits that when it doesn't pan out immediately, they can scoop them back up on the back end. And I think that's showing that they're able to build these connections and rapport that I think is going to be that much more important as the years progress with this transfer portal.
And the transfer portal is going to be big because right now I don't think they're really tracking that. Kiffin did bring that up too, where a lot of students are actively giving up their scholarship. Because when you enter the portal, I think you're giving up your scholarship.
Yes.
And you're basically letting them cut you for no reason because they're finding out that they don't have a landing spot. So it's a good way to, like, people yelled at Harbaugh for processing recruits for 5 years now? And you haven't really seen that lately. And maybe that's why the team has exceeded expectations this year, where players aren't really leaving that much. And maybe it takes a while to get that out. He's in year 7? You were year 6? Like, he's been there for a while. So Norvell, like rushing him out after rushing out Willie Taggart, after already having the downfall, I feel like you're just going to be in trouble. I do think Urban Meyer would be the guy to do that for, though. Like, if Harbaugh said, hey, I'm going to go to the NFL, and they brought in Urban Meyer, I'd be like, all right, cool. Like, awesome. Awesome. Because he's going to try to destroy Ohio State. Because I'm pretty sure that Ohio State fired him. I did hear from an Ohio State friend that Ohio State will never hire him again.
But this is but in response to your Urban talk, this is my thinking. What has he truly done that?
Man, he's a winner. Didn't you hear him talking to his assistant coaches? They're losers. And he wanted them to read their resumes to him to show that they're winners, and they couldn't do it. And they were upset about it. But he was able to read his own resume.
But he did hire them, right? Like, so he hired a bunch of losers on his staff. And I think that he's a great manager when he has the superior talent. So when he went into Ohio State, who was able to already have a roster.
That's exactly what they said about Saban.
Talent.
That's exactly what I've been saying about Saban.
He wins when he already has the elite talent in place. Like when he went to Florida, it wasn't like the kitchen was bare. He already had a talent roster,
he didn't have Tim
rich
Tebow.
roster. He recruited Tebow, and then everything else was already there. He had a bunch of murderers already on the roster. So, like, he went into that situation already with a good core group and won with the talent that was there. He goes to Ohio State, already wins with the talent that's there. And I think what you're seeing in the NFL is where he doesn't have that immense grip on him like he had in college, where he's having like players like beating on assistants and he's not doing anything about it. Like, I think that you're seeing he'll start to fizzle out now because just the same with Dabo. I think it was the same with Urban, and it was never pinned on him. But how do you leave every single place because of health conditions and then magically resurface? And now my health conditions are fine. I signed a contract with my wife and kids, and now I'm okay.
Ask Sarkisian.
Get the hell out of here.
Ask Sarkisian. He just got that number 1 guy. He's flying back, baby, from Ohio State. That's why I think with Ryan Day, too, like, what future do you have if you're having your number 1 recruit just leave? And I know you have Stroud for maybe 1 more year, so maybe this isn't the year. But who knows? That's where I wonder if you're going to have some other major coaching changes. Georgia has the other guy, their defensive coordinator. He's leaving to go to Oregon. I'm surprised that Oregon's letting him coach through the playoff. That could be a double-edged sword. I mean, Michigan's defense fell apart when their head coach, Durkin, or their defensive coordinator took the head coaching job in Maryland, Durkin. They got shredded by Ohio State. And I wonder if he didn't take the job before the game, would he have been more focused? Like if Maryland didn't offer it to him, what would have happened? What would have been different?
But I think one thing that you're looking at that's a lot different now, and it's a two-pronged thing. Number one, you have the early signing day that I think it doesn't help a lot of these newer coaches that are being hired. And this is with Florida State, they've been through it twice, where they had this early signing period, and it hasn't helped them because with all the changes that are happening, the class moves on, and you really don't have time to repair those. The best that you can do going in at this point is say, don't sign right now. Wait till the signing day later on. And if you can push a recruit to the later signing date, that's almost a win. That like that you're making a connection.
But so Oregon, and I think this also plays into it. Their recruiting class has plummeted. They're like 32nd overall. They're still number 2 in the Pac-12. So like, Matt, maybe they're just like, hey, maybe you're right, where they're like, hey, we can just get our guy, forget the early signing period, let it just fizzle because we're still second. We're behind Stanford. I mean, look at all the press Lincoln Riley's getting. USC right now is 12th in the Pac-12. They have 4 commits, Matt.
Yeah, but I think
their team sucks right now. What's he going to rebuild with? A bunch of transfers from Oklahoma?
I think that you'll see with the portal, he'll flip it faster than you think.
Well, we'll see, because I don't think he's another one where, just like Ryan Day, he hasn't built a program. He took over for Bob Stoops. Who's to say Venables doesn't just step in and Oklahoma's back to where they were, and meanwhile he goes to USC and they start failing? Because like, does USC need a higher offensive power now?
Well, did you see?
Like, no, I don't think they need a better offense. I think they need more talent and a better defense.
Did you see Gene Jones was going after Oregon for hiring Lanning?
No.
He kind of just said, you're going to be going through these cycles every couple of years now because you're choosing to go with how do you say it? You're choosing to go with a defensive-minded coach. You need an offensive guy to win.
But I don't know. With Oregon, maybe you don't. The Pac-12, like I said, they're so bad. Look at Shaw. Is Stanford lighting it up with offense, Matt? I mean, haven't been that good. I don't know. The Pac-12 is like a whole different beast. I think a lot of people are putting a lot of pressure on Riley to come in, win immediately, and save the Pac-12. I'm skeptical that it's going to happen. I don't know. Anyone else you're looking out for on signing day?
I mean, I'm just excited to see what the class Florida State's bringing in, because they've already showed that through their signings and through the portal work that they got their shit together again. So I want to see, because they have some 5-star recruits. They have 2 committed right now, and I want to see who else they're going to bring in, because there's a potential for more, and they could really round out a really special class that it was similar to the group that laid the foundation for the 2013 national championship run. So if they can do anything close to that, that would be awesome.
Do you know who the number 1 recruiting class is in the ACC?
Yeah, it's those stupid turd holes.
The Tar Heels, baby. Mac Brown. I thought he looked like he was going to die on the sideline.
But you know what? That's a guy like that, because he can't beat Florida State, so he can have better recruiting class and just keep losing that game.
Pitt right now is 12. The Pat signal, the ACC championship, Matt, didn't really help. I don't know what to say. They basically needed Kenny Pickett. They need another Kenny Pickett, I guess.
Well, and I think with Pitt, they need to. I think what will help them, and I don't know that it'll happen, but I'd love to see their wide receivers coach get internally promoted as the OC. Brendan Marion was a wide receiver at Hawaii. He's a Pitt guy. Like, he grew up in Pittsburgh. He's now he had some successful lower level coaching stints, and now he's the wide receivers coach at Pitt. And I'd like to see him get a shot as an offensive coordinator. And he kind of created his own offensive system. And just in general, I think he would be good for Pitt in the development and recruiting of Pitt athletes. And I think that would be a step in the right direction. I know Narduzzi he likes his coordinators to be like 90 years old, but I think he should make an exception on this one.
We'll see, because those ancient guys have been really helping out. I mean, they just need stability. And who knows, with the ACC, I think you have to win it a few times. And that's where I wish they had the expanded playoff that Pitt could really build off, because now they win the ACC championship. They are getting nothing for it. You don't get the recruiting bump. People don't care if you win the ACC. They don't. I mean, look at UNC. Like, they're not getting high recruiting classes from winning the ACC. Clemson's recruiting class, they've been winning the ACC forever, falling off the map. So I think you really need that playoff spot. And I'd be a poor host if I didn't bring up Penn State. Penn State was, at least I thought they were in the number one big class in the Big Ten for this year and next year. Right now, I think they still are for next year, but of course, Ohio State passed them up. And you're trying to bring that stability by keeping Franklin for 10 years. What are you going to do? Are you going to be able to capitalize on these classes? Their big thing, though, they're bringing back Sean Clifford's back as their quarterback. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't feel like he was really a game breaker quarterback that would win you the game. Like, I know he's tough. He was playing injured against Michigan this year. Maybe Penn State would have won. They were at home. Next year he has to go to the big house. Clifford's back. I feel like it's better to have the guy that you know. Your defense have been scheming against him for what feels like 20 years now, right? Like, sure, bring him back. Bring him back. No Big Ten championships. Like, what else is he going to do? But they're one of the ones where they had a big class. They had it pretty much locked up. I think everyone will sign on the early signing day period. On the other hand, Ohio State, they still have some spots open. Although and same with Michigan, but I think some of those are with the COVID thing. Because now players can stay for a 6th year, and you're waiting to see, hey, which player is going to announce that they're going to go pro, which ones are going to come back. Last year, like, Michigan had Aiden Hutchinson come back. That was a hell of a move by him to help the team. Without him, there's no way Michigan wins the Big Ten. They had a 2% chance. He had a Heisman year, basically. Like, that's what you need to take that jump. I don't know if Penn State has a guy like that. The last guy they had like that was, like, Parsons. On defense, anyway. On offense, they used to have Saquon Barkley, but then they squandered that by losing to Pitt that year and getting killed by Michigan. And then they let Ohio State in the playoffs. I don't know. That's what you're looking at. Because in terms of, like, the negative recruiting, Michigan's had a really poor class after last year's season and all the negative recruiting against Jim Harbaugh. Now their class has been climbing every day, back in the top 10. They're still 3rd in the Big Ten. But once you're in the top 10, there's really not that much of a difference, I don't think. It just depends on, are the guys actually going to stay with your school? Or are they going to be taking an Ohio State flyer where you get $1 million and you leave and go to Texas? And then you have to return your keys. Did you see that video I sent you? The dealership had like a going away video of the quarterback transferring back to Texas as he returned his whatever. It was like the Buckeye truck or something, Bucknut truck. I forget what the hell it was. I didn't really pay attention, but I thought it was funny that the kid, he's like, hey, I paid you. Come return the truck. I need to do one more video on that contract. So, but that's the one thing. Lane Kiffin's right. Now you have it right out in the open. Like, schools can try to hide money, and that's where I wonder, like, is Alabama and Georgia in the next couple of years, are they going to keep recruiting at such a high level? I know they're in the playoffs, but they're both not going to be in the playoffs every year unless it expands. Are you going to be able to keep it going? A&M's right up there. They're throwing bags out, getting people money. Miami's been doing it. And did you see the NCAA is looking into their booster?
No.
So the booster came out and he told the NCAA that they're, what did he say? He swore. He said like shit or something like, and a bunch of other stuff's against some negative. But he said that they cleared it with lawyers. They asked the NCAA if it was legal that he could pay NILs for every athlete. Because you remember him and BYU did it? And I think the NCAA is looking into both schools now for a legal booster activity. But he's like, they're cowards. I asked them. They said that they didn't know there were no rules against it. So we did it. Now they're going to sue the NCAA. And I'm like, perfect. Go after them. Because, like, why wouldn't you just do that? Like, are they afraid that, like, Clemson's Mercedes-Benz or whatever, their big plan is right there, that they're going to just start hiring like employees as like car salesmen. Who knows? Or like players, but whatever. That's what I think. If you're going to be a big school, it's the same. Matt, the top 10 classes really haven't changed, except you're throwing North Carolina in there because of Mac Brown.
But I almost think in some ways, like you have these scandals over the last couple of years where there's random like fake players getting put into end up getting ranked,
and maybe they can get that money
and rivals. Like they're made up players. They're like, oh yeah, this guy's got scholarships. They're like, oh yeah, he's a 4-star. Like,
but everyone's talking about it, saying like, oh, now it's going to even the playing field. And I've said all along, no, paying players is only going to help the bigger schools get even better, because now like Ohio State's going to say like, look, we got our guy $1 million. You think you're better than that guy? He didn't even play here. Like, and then they're going to be up there. Throw out North Carolina, and these are your top 10 recruiting classes right now for this early signing period. Florida State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Georgia. That's basically like a list of famous football programs of all time, right? Like there might be a couple that are missing, like LSU and USC, that you could throw up there. But no one's going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm surprised Ohio State's in there. I'm surprised someone said Penn State, right? They've never won a national championship. Like, oh yeah, they have. So like, am I shocked to see any of them in there? No. But I just think that it's going to get even worse. Like I pity the full Indiana, Maryland, and Rutgers for being in that division in the Big Ten East, because that's the best division, Matt. Did you know that? They're the only division to have 3 teams in the college football playoffs. Should have been 4 if Penn State didn't shit the bed against Pitt. But those other 3 teams, like, they have to just be so sad that they look up in their recruiting rankings. All the top 3 classes are top 10, and then Michigan State's hanging around at 19. Although Indiana's ahead of them right now. But I will say, like, if you're Rutgers and Maryland, like, they're talking about, hey, we could be bowl eligible. That's their goal. Bowls are going to disappear in like 10 years. What bowl are they going to be in, Matt? The Piscataway Peanut Gallery Bowl? I don't know. Let's see. Anything else you have for signing day?
No.
I brought up the Heisman stuff. I had it on here for Snubs because I was getting a lot of texts about it when Alabama's guy won the Heisman, and I didn't even watch the Heisman ceremony because he knew he was going to win, Young. But I think I talked about it earlier in the year. The same thing with Stroud. At some point, the award's supposed to go to the most outstanding player. I would think they would have advanced analytics in this, like baseball, where you do like a wins above replacement. If you're the 5th Alabama quarterback in a row to have stats like that, are you really outstanding? You just mentioned it with like Tom Brady's backups. Like, is it really surprising? You sent me like a stats from like Alabama's defensive guy. Like, awesome. Look, he had so many stats, but like, look, you're playing on Alabama's defense. Like, yeah, you can get the sacks. How many other like impact plays have you made? Did you make a fumble? No. Did you do an interception? Did you get any turnover? No. So you're just making tackles? Your defense is a bunch of 5-star dudes. Of course you're going to make tackles. Like, that, to me, that doesn't impress me. I tried to look for highlights of him, and Matt, they were literally just like him getting in the backfield and tackling guys during handoffs. I'm like, all right, impressive. But you're playing on Alabama. Like, at some point, if it's the same guy, same with like Oklahoma quarterbacks, how many Oklahoma quarterbacks are going to go in, win the Heisman, and then choke in the playoffs because they don't play anyone all year? Right?
That makes sense.
So, like, how many Ohio State quarterbacks are going to throw up godly amount of numbers, get drafted in the NFL, flame out after 1 year? All of them. Maybe that's why Ryan Day is going to the NFL. He realizes, like, yeah, I can't keep doing this. They're going to take $1 million from us and go to Texas. Right? So, I kind of gave up on the Heisman a long time ago because I'm going, like, way back. 2002, Carson Palmer got it. I thought Brad Banks should have got it. He came in second from Iowa. I mean, they were a weird Big Ten schedule fluke where they didn't play Ohio State that year. That was the Maurice Claret year. I think Iowa's only loss was because Brad Banks ended up fumbling against Iowa State, which might have cost him the Heisman. But like in terms of running and being a dynamic quarterback before like Vince Young, and you could even throw Vince Young in there too, like outstanding quarterback, didn't win the Heisman. The other big one that always stood out to me, Larry Fitzgerald. I remember thinking like, I was probably in high school at that time, but I remember thinking like, Larry Fitzgerald's going to win the Heisman. That's going to be awesome. He was so outstanding. They couldn't even cover him, Matt. He made that, I forget who they played, but he made that one touchdown with like 3 dudes on him in the end zone to win the one game for Pitt. And I remember like, oh my gosh, he's such a monster. They can't cover him at all.
What I remember from Larry Fitzgerald is I remember thinking I could be the quarterback for Pitt right now because you don't have.
Who was it? Was it Rutherford?
It was Rod Rutherford.
Yeah, I remember because I thought Larry Fitzgerald should win the Heisman. He's supposed to be the best player, and then at that point they gave it to another Oklahoma quarterback, and I'm like, wasn't it Jason White?
Might have been.
Most people don't even have any idea who the hell that is. If my years are correct, maybe I have the wrong year, but I think that
Highball.
Huh?
It was White, Highball, or Highball.
Oh, yeah. So just in terms of like the Heisman, at this point, it's the same beef I have with baseball. You have my man Barry Bonds and Pete Rose, and Major League Baseball's keeping them out of the Hall of Fame. They have no problem promoting Alex Rodriguez. No problem promoting David Ortiz. David Ortiz is like involved in shady shit. Wasn't he like at a drug dealer's house, like with getting gunshot? And they're like, "Yo, that's cool." Pete Rose though, betting on his own team. Come on. But now they're throwing all kind of FanDuel ads your way, like, "Hey, bet on this, bet on that." And Pete Rose is just sitting there at that strip mall signing autographs every day. And I think, how sad. And then my man Barry Bonds, who's getting shunned for no reason other than I think the media just hated him because he didn't do interviews. If he did interviews, they would love him. That's the only difference. People used to hate Tom Brady. Then all of a sudden, guess what? He started to lighten up, do commercials, like he's doing Subway commercials now and stuff. And everyone's kind of like, "Oh yeah, I'm warming up to Tom Brady now." But it's like, no, you didn't like him because you didn't see what he was doing. He was focused on winning. Now, after he won so much, he has a lot of free time on his hands. Like, you like him now? Like, Aaron Rodgers has been in commercials forever, and I've never been a fan. He's like letting his hair grow long, getting all greasy, getting that Pittsburgh look to him. I'm getting ready for him, Matt, when he joins the Steelers. But I don't know. The Heisman, to me, if you're going to be the best guy, be the best guy. I don't think it should be, and I know some of the teams, like, okay, if Alabama was undefeated this year and they were absolutely killing everyone, awesome. But was it a Heisman performance going to 4 overtimes against 6-win Auburn? Like, what said Heisman to you about that? Nothing. He wasn't even considered. Stroud was supposed to be a lock-in until Hutchinson destroyed him. And that's the one thing where, like, you sent me the stats against Hutchinson, and I think I brought in, like, Pro Football Focus does do the wins above replacement, and they said that Hutchinson would have been the Heisman if it wasn't for the Georgia game, which you can thank Georgia for blowing it and letting Alabama in the playoffs. But still, one game, if you're looking at like the other games where Alabama played it close, like they played it close against a poor Florida team. Where was the Heisman performance that game? How many close games did they have? Like when you're on defense, I think you have a less of a chance to really impact the score of the game. But if you're out there getting pressures, they said that he broke the NCAA record for pressures in a season, Hutchinson did, and pressures in a game at Ohio State against their first-round tackle. Like I said, if Pitt, he was an All-American. I don't know what team he was on, but I did see he was on it because Ohio State fans were saying that's not our good guy that Hutchinson was plowing over. There's that one gif of him pointing at him, telling him that he's going to destroy him, and then he pancaked him. And then Stroud, of course, throws the ball away to avoid a sack. But like that's the kind of plays that I didn't see the Alabama guy make. And talking trash while you're doing it, awesome. Do I think he needs the Heisman? No. I kind of feel bad for him because like you play that much, get your team that everyone had picked 2% chance to even win the Big Ten East, let alone the Big Ten. and he did it because of the defense. So to me, that would say Heisman. It's supposed to be the outstanding player. Were you surprised at Alabama's results? No. I'm surprised they weren't undefeated, to be honest. Because like their toughest games, they had so many close games that you think, why are they in these close games if their quarterback's a Heisman-worthy guy, you know? That's my only callback to Carson Palmer. Him and USC, I think they were shredding dudes that year. That Brad Banks didn't win it, but the USC team was awesome. And then Barkley and Bush, or not Bush, not Barkley. What's the other one? Leinart and Bush. They like had the double against Vince Young. I also thought Ndamukong Suh should have won it. He was one touchdown pass away, I think, or that first down pass by Colt McCoy. Remember where clock was out and he threw it and like it hit the ground with 1 second left and they reviewed it or whatever. Put 1 second on the clock. If the time would have ran out and they won the Big 12, I think Sue would have won the Heisman. But like, all right, he had no chance. He had no chance. The defensive player has no chance. They said that like, I think I sent you the list. A lot of Ohio State guys were on that. The Bosa guys, Chase, was it Young? Chance Young, what's his name? The guy that played for the Redskins for a bit. Those were guys that were rated higher in like wins above replacement, but then Hutchinson beat them all this year. So like those guys didn't win it. Hell, Peppers could have won it for Michigan a few years ago. If Michigan would have beat Ohio State that year, I think Peppers would have won the Heisman. Like no joke. But he also played offense. And he scored touchdowns that had punt returns and stuff. Hutchinson didn't have any of that stuff. So didn't have the stats. Still finished second. I'm just surprised that it was him. Why not Kenny Pickett? Pitt? No one picked Pitt this year. Stats are similar. And if you're going just by stats, everyone's throwing the stats in. The guy from Western Kentucky had 10,000 more yards or whatever than Alabama's guy.
But the stats are going to the issue that I have with stats is that you can bend them to prove or disprove whatever point you want to make. And the bottom line is when you see that Alabama lost to Texas, a ranked Texas A&M team, and Kenny Pickett lost to Western Michigan, you don't lose to Western Michigan ever.
Well, that's true.
And especially when you have someone like Michigan that blew them out of the water earlier in the year, you're never. It doesn't matter what you did. You lost to Western Michigan.
It wasn't 10,000, but Bailey Zappe had 1,000 more yards than the second best passing quarterback, Brennan Armstrong from Virginia. So like you can't just say stats, Matt.
Stats.
That's all I'm saying. I cut you off because you're saying nonsense about Pitt being blown out. Ignore those losses, Matt. He won the ACC. Alabama was really close to being a 2-loss team too. Sure, they didn't lose to Western Michigan, but they went to overtime. No one mentions the overtime game against Auburn, even in like Michigan's defense for number one. Because I saw someone say like, "Oh yeah, Michigan should have been number one." In regulation wins, they had a better record. Alabama went to overtime. Michigan never went to overtime.
And I never looked at the final voting, but I'm sure that you had people that were still voting Ohio State into the playoff despite losing to Michigan in their head-to-head rivalry matchups.
Oh, that's why, Matt. That's why I praise
they think they're better.
I praise Oregon all the time because if they don't beat Ohio State's in the playoffs this year. And I wouldn't even be surprised. Like I said, Ohio State would have took Cincinnati's spot. 12-0 be damned. Cincinnati would not make it over Ohio State. Thank you, Oregon. Show me that O. Go Ducks. That's all I'm saying, Matt, because, man, if it wasn't for that great coach, Cristobal, who's now in Miami, I wish him the best of luck. He really saved us from another Ohio State. Maybe Ryan Day wouldn't be thinking about going to the Bears now because he would just be in the playoffs, Matt. He'd be preoccupied. His buddy Urban Meyer will be like, hey, I'll come back and teach that leadership class you want me to teach about. I can have the guys learn about showing your staff how they're losers. Really motivate them, you know?
And showing random women how to dance under your lap.
Did I have any other snubs? I think I texted you guys some, but I don't know if I said them all. Those were the ones that that really stood out to me. Sue, Fitzgerald was ridiculous. You could say like Vince Young, going back to Brad Banks, stuff like that. Those were the ones that really stood out to me. Throwing in like Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey was a bad one. Wait, didn't he get picked up by Eddie Lacy or one of the another Alabama running back, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, Alabama, you mean the teams that's winning nonstop? Yeah, their running back's so great that they're not going to be able to plug in another running back 10 times in a row behind that offensive line, you know? But it's like Stanford, they sucked. Stanford sucked, and they haven't even been good since Christian McCaffrey and Andrew Luck, really. Right?
But you know what they did? They did put I'm drawing a blank now. The Alabama wide receiver that got drafted by Miami, and I can't think of his name.
Devonta Smith?
Yeah, Smith.
He got drafted by the Eagles, didn't he?
Eagles, I meant.
Miami. Oh, my gosh. You have Miami on the brain because Cristobal, he's already getting to you. He's getting to you, I'm telling you.
No, he's not getting to me. He got fired at Florida. He got fired at Florida International.
The only reason they gave it to him last year was because the other option was Mac Jones. Right? They didn't know he was going to be that good at
Tom Brady Jr.
Yeah, they didn't know he was going to be awesome in the NFL. Otherwise, they would have gave it to him. I bet if you go back and ask them, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we definitely should have gave it to you." And I talked about it last year. I was pulling for him to get it because I was tired of seeing quarterbacks and running backs from Alabama get it. I don't care if he was a wide receiver for Alabama. Give it to a different position group. That's why this year was set up. You had a chance with Peppers. You had a chance with Young from Ohio State. Bosa maybe. I know, didn't he get hurt or something? But like you have these guys on defense that are playing in. He basically played himself into the number one position, like overall draft quarterback. No one's drafting Young overall from Alabama, I don't think. And if they do, what do they get? Another Tua? It's not like Alabama's been putting these guys out that are great quarterbacks because they're great. You know, if Young wins a Super Bowl, I would be 100% shocked. That's my final statement on the subject. Like, if you're winning the Heisman as quarterback, and we've seen it for like 20 years now, because that's how much my beef goes back. 20 years, they're picking these quarterbacks from teams that are great. The quarterback's not great. You could plug in any quarterback. Look at Oklahoma. How many quarterbacks could they plug in? And there's been no difference, Matt. Alabama's been plugging in guys for 10 years.
Oklahoma's almost an anomaly because
System QBs. They talk about it against June Jones and Mike Leach. System QBs. Throw in Alabama and Ohio State. System QBs.
Because they have these systems in place that the NFL goes, I see that you have a system that works for you and you're successful. You're in the NFL now, and you will learn this system, and we are going to jam the round peg in the square hole, whether you like it or not.
And then guys like Kenny Pickett, people were like, well, they lost to Western Michigan. He probably sucks real bad. He'll be the best pro this year. I don't know if he's the number one QB coming off the board, but all those other guys that they've been hyping up, everyone that else was in the Heisman quarterback conversation, Kenny Pickett will be the best NFL guy. That's my statement. Pitt fans rejoice because, like I've told you before, Ohio State, until they change their system, they're not going to have a successful NFL quarterback. I mean, you're throwing to 3 first-rounders, Matt, and you still can't get more than 20 points against Michigan's defense? Michigan's defense wasn't even that good, if we're being honest. Like, they've just been balanced. I mean, Michigan State had no trouble running all over them. But who knows? So we'll see. People brought up Walker too. The Central Michigan running back though had better stats than him in every category, which I didn't know, and I thought that was funny. Someone's like, "Well, if he was on a different team, he would have got Heisman votes." And they're like, "You mean like that guy from Central Michigan that beat him in every category?" And then I didn't. Then no one commented after that, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll use that on the show." Perfect line I saw on Twitter. So that's all I have. Snubs, I don't care. Didn't really watch it. Anything else you have for college football or NFL?
No.
You have anything for the final bell? I actually don't.
I don't tonight either.
Oh, I did have. I've been putting. I did one. I did one workout post on a website. I'm going to try to do more. I just been slammed with the holiday stuff, but I haven't been running. I've been doing Ring Fit on the Nintendo Switch, which is like I showed Matt. It's like a Pilates thing or something. I don't know what the hell it is. It's a ring. But definitely, it works your like joints Because like I've had a hip injury, or like I guess not really an injury, but it's an issue where like my hip pops. I don't know if you've ever heard that. But like if I do mountain climbers or something, my hip pops every time I bring my leg out. I guess it's called like ballerina hip or something. And so it's been bothering me when I run. It's like really, really stiff. So I'm trying this new thing since it's cold outside. I'm going to try to like get rid of that by increasing my hip range. So I'll be checking in to let you know if there's some updates. Well, but that's what I've been doing because, man, I can't take it anymore. So that's all I have. You have anything else?
Nope. Check out southboundsports.com. We appreciate you giving our website some traffic. Richie does a great job, and we appreciate the support.
Yeah, and we'll probably do a college pick'em for the bowl season. So we're getting that up. Like I said, maybe we'll have some fantasy football stuff on there. I've been thinking about maybe throwing up some extra stats. Maybe just throwing up undervalued guys. Maybe I can do that on the homepage, but we'll see. If you have any ideas, let me know. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.